Shabbos, everyone. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos. Today is Friday, July 25th. It is the 29th of the month of Tammuz. Rosh Chodesh of Av, of the month of Av, is Shabbat this week. Um, so we are in that transition point of saying goodbye to one month and hello to a new month. Um, The Willamette River is flowing at 6,530 cubic feet per second right now, which means that it is now well above the 25th percentile. It's actually above both the median and the mean for this day in history. The 75th percentile is is only about 600 cubic feet per second more. So we're sort of right in the middle right now in terms of flow rate. The new moon will not appear in the sky until tomorrow, as far as I can tell. Um, and but otherwise in the sky tonight, you will see, if you're up at the right times, you'll see Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. And the same constellations are up right now: Orion, Scorpius, the Big Dipper or Ursa Major, and Gemini. Um, This week's parasha is a double parasha that completes the book of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers. This week's parasha is called Matot, that's the first parasha, and Masei, which is the second parasha. Masei means journeys, and that part of this week's portion begins Ela Masei v'nei Yisrael asher yatzu me'eretz Mitzrayim tzivot biad Moshe v'Aharon. These are the journeys of the children of Israel who came out of Mitzrayim according to their hosts by the hand of Moshe and Aharon. And Vayichtov Moshe et motzaehem lema'asehem al pi Adonai ve'elema'asehem lemotzaehem. Moshe recorded the starting points of their various marches as directed by Hashem. Their marches by starting points were as follows. So in this parasha, they go on to list, starting with departing from Ramses in Mitzrayim. They go for the next 40 years around the desert. They move 42 times. There are 42 journeys, beginning with Ramses and ending at the edge of the Holy Land on the other side of the Ardennes River. 42 journeys in 40 years. Why record all of this, though? Why record all of these journeys? One of the practices that comes out of this is a way of thinking about how to say goodbye, how to part ways. And in order to do it in a sacred way, you need to recognize where you have been, what you learned in all of those along that way, what was hard, what could you have done better? It's all about cheshbon nefesh. It's looking back and reflecting on what were the blessings and what were the challenges. What can I learn? Because the idea is that you're always journeying upward. Let's say you're always journeying upward. So when you're at the place of transition between one place and another place, it's very important to count your blessings, to count your travels while you are in that liminal space, in order to better prepare you for moving on, continuing to mature, continuing to grow in the next part of the journey. Our tradition has many, many different ways of honoring this liminal space, these liminal spaces. In fact, I would say that Judaism loves liminal spaces when you're moving from one space to another space. So a mezuzah literally comes from the verb to move. A mezuzah that you hang on the doorpost marks a transition point from inside your house to outside your house. When we eat, we make a blessing, marking a transition between having the food sit in front of us to it being ingested by us. When we say goodbye to Sukkot, we have a special ceremony that honors the experience of the sukkah, of the sukkah itself. When we get rid of books that we can no longer use, it's not just a matter of throwing them in the recycling bin or throwing them out. It's a whole sacred process. When you get rid of a talit, when you get rid of your tefillin, all of these things are sacred. These things are sacred, and the parting, how you do the parting, is part of the holiness that you imbue in both what has been, what is, and what will be. The Talmud says in Brachot 31, a person, before taking leave of their friend, should not part with ordinary conversation, joking, frivolity, or idle talk, but rather with a matter of halacha, which I think is beautiful. A matter of halacha. Halacha is the word that is translated often into English as Jewish law, which is unfortunate because halacha comes from the word to walk. So halacha is the path. It's how you move through life. It is it is the way in which we sanctify our lives and sanctify the world around us. So when people would part, and still to this day, when people part, they will share something from halacha. To do it in a really artful form, you cite a Torah verse or a matter of mamash halacha or something from a text that you have studied together, or maybe haven't studied together, but which speaks to the nature of your friendship, what you have learned, and also serves as a kind of blessing for moving forward, moving on into the next chapter of growth and maturation. The Talmud continues, as we find in the early prophets, that they would conclude their talks with words of praise and consolation. Not just our sages taught this, but so did Mari, the grandson of Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yirmiyahu ben Ava, teach. Before taking leave of your friend, you should always part with a matter of halacha so that you remember them. So that you remember them. It's not a skill that I have fully developed yet. I'm working on it. But my teacher Eben, my holy teacher Eben, is a master of goodbyes. He's a master of goodbyes. At the end of a phone call, at the end of a visit, at the end of visiting him in his office, he always had something that he would pull up from that was relevant to the conversation, that was relevant to something he wanted to teach, that was a kind of blessing. And in that way, you sanctify, you make holy this transition from being in the same place to not being together. There's also an interesting teaching in the Talmud about what you actually say, what you can actually say. What are the words you say when you say goodbye? So there's lech lishalom and lech bishalom. Lech lishalom means go toward peace, go to peace. Lech bishalom means go in peace or go in wholeness, go in completion. So an example they bring in the Talmud of where someone says lech lishalom, Yitro says to Moshe lech lishalom. So sorry, Yitro says to Moshe, Moshe's father-in-law says to Moshe lech lishalom, and it turned out to be a blessing because Moshe did go on to ascend and be successful. On the other hand, David HaMelech, said to his son Avshalom, Lech Bishalom, go in peace, and ultimately Avshalom became a criminal and was hung. So how you say go go in peace um, matters. I actually think both sayings are quite beautiful. Go in peace, meaning like walk in peace, walk in peace. That's a beautiful thing to say to someone. Lech lishalom connotes like go continue to grow, go continue striving for shalom, go continue working toward greater sense of wholeness. Another practice is, when when someone leaves, to actually accompany them some amount of distance. So, some people, when they say goodbye to people, they walk out to their car, they wait for them to get in the car, the person drives off, they wave to them the whole way. This is such a beautiful way of saying goodbye. Um, Before there were cars, people would actually walk a certain amount of distance, sometimes as much as a mile with the other person, as a way of honoring the connection, a way of receiving blessing from the connection you've had, and just honoring the relationship by accompanying them some distance. We actually reenact this every week at the end of Shabbat. We enact this every week at the end of Shabbat. The ceremony Havdalah is not just about saying goodbye to Shabbat. In fact, we actually have a small party at the end of Shabbat called Melave Malka, which means escorting the queen. And so Havdalah and a tiny meal. Someone once said, like, I know you're probably already full at the end of Shabbat, so just like have one piece of cake, something to honor the sweetness of Shabbat, and something also to mark the fact that you're bringing Shabbat, a taste of Shabbat, with you into the week. So it's not just a parting, it's not just a goodbye. It's an honoring of the meeting that happened, an honoring of the place you are in transition, which is Havdalah, moving from Shabbat into Yom Rishon. And then you are also incorporating the feeling of that friendship, of that connection with Shabbat with you into the week. When you really orient yourself around Shabbat, then from Sunday to Wednesday, you're kind of carrying in your body the experience of Shabbat that just passed, and then from Wednesday to Friday, you're looking at an anticipation for the return of Shabbat. So in that same way, we actually accompany people when they leave our homes or when we leave a meeting. There is a mitzvah, an act of kindness to follow the person, to walk with them a bit of the way. On those steps, if you can share words that reflect what the relationship meant, how you grew in that relationship. And if you can actually connect it to Torah, meaning the vast sea of Torah, it could be a story about another Jew that you know. It could be something from Tanakh. It could be something from a story you knew, something that brings Torah into the conversation. It leaves a reshima. It leaves an impression on the person, as the Talmud said, so that you will remember them. And the remembering is important because as we leave a place, we want to reflect on what we have experienced, and both the pluses and the minuses. That's how we grow. And we want to carry the blessings and the learnings with us as we move into the next adventure. As Menachem Mendel Schneerson said, the Lubavitcher Rebbe said, our sages taught one should not take leave of their friend other than with a parting word of Torah law or a Devar halacha. Our holy Rebbes, he writes, explained thus: the parting word should be the kind of Torah teaching that transforms the listener into a mehalech, a traveler, the same word as halacha, the same shorish, from the same root. Mehalech, a traveler, one who journeys. Journeying, hiluch, means to rise and to grow from level to level with one ascent after another. Such progression embodies the superiority of the human being over the angels. The blessings to all of us that we recognize the sacredness of liminal spaces, which is the space of saying goodbye to one space and moving into another space. And blessings that we all learn from, the journey we have been on for the past 9 years, the ups and the downs, all the things we went through. My God, 9 years. It was it was COVID, it was forest fires, it was crazy heat wave days, it was two Trump presidencies, it was armed militiamen on the main streets of Salem, it was a militant capital takeover in our city, not just in Washington, D.C., but that happened too, one thing after another. But reflecting on what we have learned as individuals and as a community as we move forward, naming those, listing those, considering those, and offering blessings to each other based on what we have learned and what we hope for, what our aspirations are for each other as we move into a new holy space. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.